think in Turkey and in other countries, women who give news and information are huge, have independent voices and independent roles, and they're doing really, really well. It's just interesting here in the United States. It hasn't really happened so.
I think when cable news starts to lose more and more journalists, when they, as they continue with their layoffs, as they seem to do, more women who have. I had a unique background. I was a White House correspondent for a network. I already knew how to do broadcast journalism. I was a podcast host. I wrote a newsletter. It made sense. For a lot of people, they may have only been a print reporter their entire life, or they've only been a broadcast journalist. So it was an easier leap for me to do this. And I just think that you just have to take the leap. And I think it's cool to see women doing it all the time. Who knows, maybe we'll create a lady collective or something.
I'm only smiling because I can pick up a trend here. Cable news is on the wane. Stop watching TV. Listen to me at 5. It's kind of, there's a mood here. Let's talk about the challenges. David, maybe start with you and pick up on something that Tara said. It's a treadmill in many ways, isn't it? It's monetization. It's how do I put out more content? How do I get more engagement? How do you manage all of that when you're kind of a one-man, one-woman machine?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of options. One is you really do everything yourself, and you kind of have to enjoy the business side of it. The other is you start to take on a structure that is a little more corporate, and you start delegating in that way, or some combination of the two. I enjoy the business side of it, but I also can't do it myself anymore, so I have a team. There are a lot of people that don't. I think one of the challenges is, as it becomes clear that the independent news space can be lucrative and it can be interesting and you can build a large audience, legacy and corporate media is going to want to come into it, and to a degree they already have. You look at some of the largest YouTube news channels, they are legacy companies that have just dumped huge money to rapidly scale YouTube channels. And so you might start to get that same 80-20 or even 90-10, where overwhelmingly those who come in with the funds are going to very quickly kind of scoop up market share. The other thing that's interesting is for a long time when I was doing this, when new people came into the market, I didn't really see them as competitors in the sense that the pie was growing so quickly that it was just great for everybody. I think now it's starting to get to the point, especially as people can only consume so much stuff in a day, there's 24 hours in a day, et cetera. It's less clear to me now. Like, I do think the spaces are starting to get a little bit more crowded, where there's more of a shift between creators rather than like we're just growing the pie at the same time that everybody's getting their slice. So I don't know where that goes in the next 5 to 8 years.
Don,
I don't know either. I don't look at people as competitors either. It's interesting because I would look at the folks on other networks when I was in traditional media as competitors. But, we support each other. Tara's on my channel all the time. If she invites me to do something, I'll do it. I can call people. I use my own Rolodex as, instead of a booker, and I get people to come on who have their own independent channels, and we support each other. In some
ways, is it because you don't have the framework or structure or support that a traditional or legacy news organization could give you, that it's scrappy, of course, but you need to sort of hold each other close?
Yeah, and in terms of what you said about creating the channel, creating channels and legacy media, I don't think that they really had gotten that. I shouldn't probably give away the secret that they don't need to use so many resources to do what they do, because I put on coverage. Jim Acosta, Joy Reid, and I did coverage of 2 different things: a huge protest and I forget what the other event was, and we did it with my small team, which is a team of 4 people doing it. Tara was part of it and we didn't have to have 30 producers and a writer and a control room and all of those things. And it was network quality coverage that people tuned into, and it was actually more interesting because we didn't have it wasn't seen through a corporate filter. We went pushing through a corporate filter and saying, can I say this? Is a boss going to be mad if I happen to insult Donald Trump even inadvertently? Is he going to call the company and say, get rid of that guy on the anchor desk? We don't have those challenges.
Yeah, sure. One is the financial burnout, and the other is the creative burnout. Ben, do you want to jump in on that? WTF shut down.
Yeah, so I believe I have not missed a day of work that was not a company holiday in 4 years, including vacations with my family, right? Because if you're not on the air, then it's not like there's a substitute host on my show, for example. And so, it can burn you out. Plus, this news cycle has been increasingly frenetic for over a decade. And I keep looking around going, when is somebody going to take a breath? And nobody has taken a breath, and it just gets more psychotic every single moment. And so at a certain point, it went from being, fun to kind of a drag. And sometimes it goes back to being fun. But the reality is that like anything else, on a daily basis, it sort of depends on what you're covering, whether it's interesting. The news cycle is so fast now that a cycle that would have taken 2 weeks now takes 2 days. And by day 3, you're kind of bored with the topic already, and you got to move on to the next thing, and so is the audience. And so that's very difficult. In terms of the business, I will say I'm in a bit of a different position because we actually scaled like a very large scale company. What that meant was bringing on other creators, some for good, some for ill. And I think
talk about that?
Not particularly. But,
#no regrets.
Regrets. We have a few. But I think that because as all of us kind of mature in our spaces, we're going to have to face a lot of the same questions the legacy media outlets face about, who you want on your air. What are the editorial standards? What are the things you have to do? And those are challenges that, thank God we have those challenges because we grew so large, but they are challenges for sure.
Yeah. I realize we're almost at time, and there's so many questions. I apologize we haven't had time because the conversation was so great, but I encourage you to find the news creators and speak to them. But let me close with sort of a 2-sentence from each of you, and this is a bit of a challenge. One, how do you respond to the observation that news creators are essentially remixers? And the second, if you had kind of a top tip, aside from don't blow up so many resources, what would it be for traditional news media organizations? Do you want to
Oh boy,
starting
with me. Well, I think, so on the... Tell me the first one again. I want to go.
First one is, are news creators essentially news remixers?
Oh yeah, yes, they are. Yes, absolutely. But I see that as a feature rather than a bug, and I think the audience appreciates that there is still this kind of underbelly of close to straight news reporting, and we're layering opinion, hopefully in an authentic and genuine way. And I think that's actually the appeal and sort of like the parasocial relationship. And does a person's personality resonate with the audience? I think that's a feature rather than a bug. And tell me the second part.
Top tip.
Top tip. Okay, the top tip is just start creating the content right away. Okay. There's so many conversations I have with people who want to start, and they're asking me about publicists, and they're asking me about microphones and lighting and who can print their merch, and all of this stuff is completely irrelevant. The number one thing is get the content onto the platforms as quickly as possible, start getting feedback, iterate based on that. That's really the big thing you have to do.
Yeah. Super.
I'll say what he said. I do think that certain creators are remixers. And I see a difference between a creator and a journalist. And as long as you say what you are, then I'm okay with it. But there are some journalists who aren't doing journalism. And there are some creators who are actually doing a good job at journalism. So I don't think that there's one or the other. I just think that both can coexist and that we have to adapt to the new environment. What I would say is perfection is boring. And so if you're going to do it, again, what he said, just do it, and don't worry about it being perfect. And don't let, perfect be the enemy of the good? I think that's, and have integrity.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as us being remixers, obviously, we're not the ones who are doing a lot of the core reporting. I think that's always been true. And so sometimes we're spotting a buried lead in paragraph 19 that may be, not elevated in a way that we might find interesting. And I think that is a real service, but to pretend that the legacy media doesn't have a continuing role is silly. I think the question you asked was about tips for the legacy media,
yes.
Correct? So the tips for the legacy media, and I think the number one thing for the legacy media is acknowledge your bias. I think that the legacy media are constantly suggesting that they're fully objective, floating above the fray, fully capable of removing themselves from the sort of day-to-day politics. And I admire the attempt by many people to do that. I actually do think that that's a useful thing, and I think journalistic practices are necessary. But it also happens to be that if you want to know the number one critique of legacy media from the right, and this has been true for decades, all the errors fall in the same direction, and yet we keep hearing about objectivity. If all the errors are going in one direction, and we keep hearing how objective the journalists are, we start to doubt that you're telling us the truth, not just about your own objectivity, but about everything you're saying. And so I think one of the things that, I'll mention my friend Barry Weiss, I think what Barry is trying to do at CBS News is quite good, actually. I think bringing on people of openly political views from different perspectives to discuss issues is really important, and I hope that more legacy media institutions would acknowledge how polarized we are, and the way to solve the polarization is not to ignore it, it's to host conversations between people who disagree.
Tara,
yeah, I would say I still do think about I still think about what I can offer that's new, that hasn't been reported, and why you might find value in my channel. So I do actually call sources. I do try to break stories. Some days they're big, some days they're not. Some days it's news analysis. Some days I'm just calling sources on the Hill and trying to make sense of the last election. And you know, I'll write something on Substack and I'll host a show. Obviously, the Epstein story has been really big, but I also was covering that really closely when a lot of people weren't for the past 6 years. So I've been able to offer new reporting, new analysis, and exclusives. But yeah, I believe legacy media has a huge value. I do use their reporting as support for my reporting, and often it leads to future reporting. And in some ways, yeah, we're remixers. But like you said, people want to feel like there is, they like you. They like your personality. They like the way you call shots. I think we need more referees, honestly, than we need to have people on tribes online. And I try to be a referee. That's how I see myself in this game. And yeah, I'm a person, of course. We all grow up with our biases just by the fact of, you know, being a first-generation American. I'll have a bias because of that, and it's subconscious. But I try not to bring it, you know, into everything. So that's my angle for this world. And my tip is to do it. Exactly. You know how many people? I'm sure it's the same thing. People ask all the time. I want to do what you're doing. Okay, well then just put a camera in front of your face and start talking. That's the first step.
I didn't hear the question. You said to what was
to legacy
advice
media.
to legacy media. Oh, well, my advice. I agree.
Don't fire Don Lemon.
I agree somewhat. Well, that's true. Thank you very much. We agree on a lot. And I do agree somewhat of what you said. So this is a conversation that we used to have when he would come on my show. But I don't think that journalists are as biased, maybe as you think. I have a different opinion of what's happening at CBS. But my thing would be for the corporation to get out of the newsroom. Because the problem is not with the journalists, it's with the gatekeepers. And if the corporation becomes the gatekeeper, then there's going to be constant influence from the people that we're supposed to be holding accountable, like the people in Washington, D.C., the people who own things, the wealthy people, the oligarchs, the billionaires. Those are the people that we're supposed to be holding accountable. And if they are filtering, if we are getting information that's filtered through them, and we must do that, or legacy media, then the game is over.
And also just the deal making for you know, just to get the interview, the scoop, it's just so political, right? Inside of the newsroom. And that's the great thing about what we're creating. We create our own newsrooms.
And lose the desk. Completely at time. Big round of applause, please, for our news creators today. Thank you all very much.
All right.
Wow, amazing discussion, everyone. I want to mention that the